Well, welcome to Intro to Routing as we're starting 15 minutes late tonight, which we'll finish 15 minutes early. So that gives me how long? 30 minutes? 45 minutes to do these two slides sets. We're going to talk about RIP version 1 tonight. How it does automatic summarization and what the proper operation for RIP version 1 is. RIP version 1 uses distance vectoring router protocol, or is a classful DV, right? We talked about that on Monday. You gotta remember distance vectorings, right? It measures it by what we call a hop count. How many hops before it dies, right? Routes with a hop count 15 are unreachable. If your hop count is greater than 15, it's considered unreachable. Updates are broadcast every 30 seconds. I'm not really going to go into the headers of the RIP message because we're not going to go that far in depth, all right? RIP operation. It has two different types of messages. It has a request and response, right? Anytime you talk to someone, you're having a request and response. Request message is sent out on startup by RIP on that particular interface that it's enabled on. It requests all the people in the class to get information. So if I say, give me your phone number. Jackson's like, no, he's not going to social engineer me. I already have your number. I'm not worried about Jackson. Do what? Yeah, I do. Try Oasis. It isn't ours.
I just got a new number like 3 weeks ago.
The number that's in there, I have a number for you. Whether it works or not, that's a different story. I just told you I have a number for you. Okay. Response message, y'all, the routers would be sending me the response saying what's going on. Remember we talked about in the last week about our class A, B, and C's, right? Y'all know, how many times have I hit y'all on subnetting this semester? Pretty much every night you've had something to do with subnetting, and it's because that's what Cisco is based off of in routing protocols. Our RIPs, or Routing Information Protocols, default administrative distance is 120. So when you're looking at the routing table, you see where it says 120-1. This RIP, you can find the R, wherever the R is, right here. Tells you it's a RIP. And its administrative distance to get to this one, coming out of the .6.2 to the one network. Okay, that's the administrative distance. Typical topology, you'll see small topologies, all right? Nothing extravagant for version 1 because you don't want to get too far in depth. You don't want to have any PCs attached to your LANs. You have 5 different uses or 5 different IP subnets, things like that. How do I do it? When you get to the config prompt, actually, your prompt will just say R1 config. Right here, you type in router RIP. That's it. Router RIP. Now you're configuring the routing information protocol on the network. Then I specify the networks that it's going to attach to. In this instance, network 192.168.10.20, right? So if I'm on R1, 192.168.10, that's the 2s, here's the 1s. It will find everything between these two. This one will find this one and this one. This one will find this one and this one, right? But you can also add in 4.0. Is that, where's 4? Oh, yeah. 2, 3, 4. It's everything connected to it. Does that make sense? When I do router RIP network, you want every connection, whether it's serial or LAN, you want to do your network for. Make sure it's classful. So show IP route will allow you to see the routes that it's going. Here's what the information that you're going to see in a RIP routing table. You'll see R, which says it's RIP, right? The network address in which that route is going to be contributed. /24 is a subnet mask because this is a class C address. 120-2, that means you have administrative distance of 120, and then the /2 tells me how many hops do I have to get to there. Does that make sense? Remember when I had the 120-1 on there? It means one hop away from that network. Then you have via the interface that it's going out. How long was it since the last update occurred? And what is the interface that it's going to be connecting to? So if I did show IP protocols, it would give me routes and show me how the protocols are done. All right. If I want to see how it's connecting and how often it's sending, I can use my debug command. But again, like I said, don't use this unless you absolutely have to, because you're going to want to kill yourself when you do, because it sits there and interrupts every command line. You see how many times it does it? Let's see, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 updates in that short amount of period. It's like every 5 seconds it does it. So you better hopefully you can type in a command, hit enter in 5 seconds. Passive interface prevents the router from sending updates through an interface. That's all it does. Anyway, when you show IP protocols, that'll get what you get. If we modify our topology to change the IP's addresses, now we're on 16s, right? But if I subnet it into 3 smaller subnets, I can go down to the 24, right? Correct? Because remember, it's a class full. So if I have a number here that's changing from the next network, it's automatically going to say this is a class full address. If this number is a 0, then it'll only say 16. All right? Here's how you do it. Router rip, network, and they screwed that up. Network. So at least 192.168.4.8 is not going to work. And how in the world are you doing that as a network? Unless they're making that the WAN connection on a /30. Yep, that's what it is. /30 right here. R2 is the boundary border, so anything that's inside of here can be seen inside that first network of the 172.30.0.0. Since they misspelled it, they're not going to be able to see over here anyway. Don't ask me how it's showing that it worked here, because they didn't do it right. Okay, you have 2 different rules that govern it. If the routing update and the interface it's received on belong to the same network, then the subnet mask of that interface is applied to it. If it's on a different one, it'll be applied in the routing update. Confused? Sending RIP. RIP automatically gives you route summarization. I loved RIP commands because they were so easy to do. The advantage of automatic summarization, the size of the routing updates is reduced. You don't have to do static routing. Everyone going to say yes, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much.
The problem is it does not support discontiguous networks. So, it's only going to advertise the major network LANs. Okay, here's your default route. Remember 00000000 at the serial port, right? Y'all remember those default routes? What is a default route? What's the default route? Can anyone tell me? Your static route is going to go this way. Your default route will go that way. RIP would push it down. Static route would come back up. If you're on 3. Default information originate. All it does is take the original default information and propagate those static routes to RIP. That's all it does. Any questions on RIP1? So what is the command? Router RIP, and what after that? The network. But what's on the network command? The network IP. Okay? So there's your commands when we're talking about RIP. Pretty simple, right? RIP version 2. Let's talk about the differences between RIP version 1 and RIP version 2. We're going to show how to use RIP version 2. The cool thing about RIP version 2 is you can use VLSM Insider. Alright? What's the difference? RIP 1 is a classful, doesn't support discontiguous subnets, doesn't support VLSM, does not send the subnet mask in the routing table. Okay? RIP version 2, it's a classless, which means you can use VLSM or CIDR. The next hop is always included. Routing updates are multicast instead of broadcast. And then you have authentication if you want. Alright? Both have a maximum hop count of 15. That means it can only go 15 to find it. Alright. Let's say we have a scenario with 3 routers. It's discontiguous, and there exists a static summary route. Okay, which is your 192.168.0.0s. That'll kill you, right? Routers 1 and 3 contain VLSM. Router 2 does not. What is VLSM going to do? VLSM subnetting, right? We're going to use private IP address that are on the LAN links. Public's IPs are on the WANs, right? Loopback interfaces. What's the loopback interface IP? What? No, 172. No, I'm sorry. It was 127.0.0.1. I'm thinking of private IP addressing. Sorry. I was like, what? No, okay. Null interfaces. This is a virtual interface that does not need to be configured. Traffic is not sent or and is discarded. Static routes and null interfaces. Null interfaces will serve as an exit interface for the static route. In other words, if I want to make a supernet route, I can just say 192.168.0.0, which means anything on the 192.168 network isn't going to go anywhere. Route redistribution. How do I do it? All I got to do is say redistribute static. So it's going to take all those static routes that were implemented on R2 and forward them to each one of the tables. With RIP1, you can't really use a lot of connectivity tests, such as IP interfaces brief, ping, and traceroute. Remember RIP version 1's subnet masks are not sent in the updates. Why? Because everything's classful. If it has a 0, then it's assuming that that's the class. Debug IP RIP. Like I told you earlier, don't do it unless you absolutely want a pain or if you need to troubleshoot something. RIP1 doesn't use VLSM. Why? Because it doesn't send subnet masks. Again, we've been talking about this over and over and over. It doesn't support classes and domain routing because it does not subnet. It's a classful address. How many times y'all got the point now, right? RIP1 is a classful address protocol. RIP version 2, I'm not going to get into the difference between the message formats. Enabling verifying RIP version 2. The default is RIP1. So if you just do router rip, it's only going to go router rip version 1. If you want to do it, you have to go router rip, the next line, version 2. So you have to specify your version of rip. When you do it, then it will ignore version 1. Auto summary. We'll send out the auto summary updates with the subnet masks. You can turn it off by disabling it by saying no auto summary. Again, I'm not going to talk about debugging. It is a classless one, so you can use VLSM and CIDR. So I can come in and say 10.1.0.0/16. Okay. Remember, CIDR is using supernetting. It verifies the supernet. Come on, where is it? Okay, when you're troubleshooting RIP version 2, you're going to say version 2, right? Network statements. Make sure that you have the right, that you type in network correctly, unlike what they showed you in the previous chapter. Automatic summarization, so you can turn it on so it will summarize to everyone. And you can authenticate the routing information. It's really good to do that to make sure that the information is correct. And then ISIS, OSPF, EIGRP, BGP, and RIP version 2 are the only ones that you can do that on. And like I said, on Monday we'll cover EIGRP, which we'll also talk about IGRP. Okay? They're both distance vector. Don't ask me why this is in blue. Classless routing, there's your difference. That's really pretty much the difference between the two of them. Any questions? The only difference between RIP and RIP2 is that you have to validate the version, and then you can use CIDR numbers on your network. Pretty simple, right? Now you know the difference between RIP and RIP2? Yes?
If RIP2 can do everything that RIP1 can do, why is RIP1 default?
Why?
Yeah, why? If I
Ask Cisco.
I'll never get an answer.
Well, no, because when you're programming router RIP, that's just the default command. And then, so you just specify version 2 if you want version 2. Any questions?